The rain-slicked streets of East Riverfront gleamed under the sodium glow of flickering street lamps, the air thick with the metallic tang of wet asphalt and the distant rumble of barges churning against the current. Victor Hale stood at the edge of the pier, his broad shoulders cutting a shadow against the murky water, phone pressed to his ear as he barked orders into the night. "Get it sorted, Marco. No loose ends on that shipment. Customs is already sniffing around." His voice was low, gravel rough from years of commanding men who feared the clip of his words more than any bullet. At 42, Hale ran the Hale Syndicate like a shadow empire. Logistics woven through the city's veins, docks for imports that never saw daylight, warehouses that swallowed secrets, and a network of enforcers who ensured debts were paid in blood or coin. He didn't hear the patter of small feet over the hum of the city, not until a tiny hand tugged at the hem of his tailored wool coat. Victor glanced down, irritation flaring. Kids had no business in his world, especially not here, where the river whispered threats to anyone who lingered too long. But the girl staring up at him wasn't begging for change or lost in the crowd. She was maybe 7, her dark curls plastered to her forehead by the drizzle, wide brown eyes unblinking beneath the brim of a too-big baseball cap. Her skin, a rich mahogany, flushed with urgency, and her grip on his sleeve was fierce, like she was anchoring herself against a storm. "Mister," she said, her voice a clear bell cutting through the downpour, "your men took my mum by mistake. They're in a black SUV, the one with the dented fender. Please, you gotta help." Victor's phone slipped from his fingers, clattering onto the wet pavement. The call cut dead, Marco's voice echoing faintly into silence. He stared at her, the world narrowing to those eyes that held no fear of him, only a desperate plea that pierced his armored calm. In all his years, no one had approached him like this, unscripted, raw. His men? A mistake? The words lodged in his chest like a bad intel drop. He knelt slowly, rain beading on his stubbled jaw, keeping his movements deliberate to not spook her. "Kid, you got the wrong guy. I don't know your mom." She shook her head, curls bouncing, and pointed toward the shadowed alley across the street where tires had splashed through puddles moments ago. "I saw 'em. They grabbed her outside the bodega on 12th. She was yelling about a delivery mix-up, said something about a package that wasn't hers. One of 'em had a tattoo, like a snake on his neck. Yours, right? I know your face from the news, the big boss man." Victor's pulse quickened, a rare crack in his composure. The snake tattoo, that was Rico's mark, one of his mid-level runners handling the less savory pickups. A botched grab? In his operation, mistakes like that didn't happen. They were engineered out with burner phones, rotating plates, and scouts who mapped every angle. But this girl, she was no ghost, no setup. Her sneakers were scuffed, her jacket threadbare, smelling faintly of cheap laundry soap and the river's brine. He scanned the pier instinctively, eyes catching the glint of a security camera on the warehouse opposite, its red light steady. Had it caught this? His mind raced through logistics. The shipment tonight was a routine haul from the docks, crates of electronics that masked laundered cash and smuggled goods. If his men had veered off script. "What's your name?" he asked, voice softening just a fraction, the way he reserved for his own daughter before the accident that had taken her. Legacy weighed heavy on him. He'd sworn never to let innocence bleed for his code. No families touched, no kids orphaned. That was his line, drawn in the sand of a life built on grey. "Lila," she whispered, glancing over her shoulder as thunder grumbled low. "Mom's name is Elena. She works nights at the hospital, cleans the halls. Please, mister." They drove that way, toward the tunnels. Tunnels, the old service routes under the bridge, perfect for vanishing acts or dumps if things went south. Victor straightened, fishing his phone from the puddle, screen cracked, but it powered on. He thumbed a quick text to Marco. "Abort all grabs. Report on 12th and River. Now." but doubt gnawed. If this was a rival play. The Vasquez crew had been probing his edges lately, testing with false manifests and tipped-off feds, using a civilian as bait. It reeked of desperation, the kind that invited wars. "Stay close, Lila," he said, extending a hand she took without hesitation. Her palm was cold, trusting in a way that twisted something deep in him. They moved toward his black Escalade, parked at the pier's end, the engine still idling, wipers slashing rhythmically. His driver, Jax, a hulking figure with a scarred lip, raised an eyebrow from the front seat, but said nothing. Years of reading Victor's moods had taught him silence. As they pulled onto the rain-lashed road, Victor's mind pieced the puzzle. Elena, a hospital cleaner, low profile, easy mark for a mistaken identity if Rico's crew had bad intel on a debtor. The girl had mentioned a package, perhaps one of his discreet ledgers, coded in plain sight, meant for a drop at the bodega. Human error, the weakest link in any chain. He glanced at Lila in the rear view, her face pressed to the window, watching the city blur by. Surveillance was his game, cameras on every corner, guards with earpieces tracking rotations. But this was personal, a snag in the fabric he'd woven so tight. The SUV's tires hummed over grated bridges, the river fading behind them as they veered toward the underbelly of the city. Victor's phone buzzed. Marco. No grabs scheduled. Rico's off-grid, checking plates. Off-grid. That meant trouble, the kind that ended in betrayals or bodies. Lila shifted, her small voice breaking the tension. "You believe me, right? Mom says never talk to strangers, but you're not like them." "Not yet," Victor murmured, eyes on the mirrors for tails. A set of headlights lingered too far back, dipping into shadows. Was it his, or something worse? As the tunnels loomed ahead, black mouths swallowing the road, he wondered if this little girl's tug on his sleeve had just unraveled everything, or pulled him into a debt he couldn't repay. The Escalade's headlights sliced through the thickening gloom as they plunged into the first tunnel, the river's murmur fading to a hollow echo against concrete walls, slick with condensation. Victor's grip tightened on the armrest, the leather creaking under his fingers, while the air inside the SUV grew heavy with the scent of damp stone and exhaust fumes seeping through the vents. Lila huddled in the back seat, her small frame dwarfed by the expanse of black upholstery, knees drawn up as if the darkness outside could swallow her whole. Jax kept his eyes on the road, the wiper's rhythmic slap, the only sound breaking the tension, but Victor caught the subtle flex of his driver's jaw, a tell that said he was scanning the mirrors too. "Jax, lose that tail if it's real," Victor said, voice clipped, not taking his eyes off the rear view. The headlights behind them had held steady for 2 turns now, neither closing in nor dropping back, classic probe, the kind his rivals used to map a mark's routes without committing. The Vasquez family had been bold lately, slipping fake shipping manifests into his ports to choke his cash flow, but this felt sloppier, more personal. If Rico had botched a grab, it could be an inside leak, one of his own turning coat for a better offer. Jax nodded once, accelerating smoothly as the tunnel curved, the sodium lights overhead strobing across their faces in harsh flickers. "On it, boss. Plate's a ghost. Stolen, probably. Want me to call in the crew?" "Not yet. Keep it quiet." Victor twisted to glance at Lila, her face pale in the dashboard glow, fingers twisting the hem of her jacket. She met his gaze, those wide eyes holding a mix of hope and the sharp edge of a kid who'd seen too much too young. "You said your mom was at the bodega on 12th. What exactly did she say about the package?" Lila swallowed, her voice small but steady, cutting through the engine's low growl. She was picking up groceries after her shift. This guy in a hoodie bumped her, dropped a bag like a black duffel, heavy. She bent to help, and he whispered something about it being yours now, before running off. Then those men came, the ones with the SUV. They thought she took it on purpose, I guess. Mom yelled she didn't know what it was, but they grabbed her anyway. A duffel. Victor's mind raced through the logistics. His drops were always coded. Burners for coordinates, plain envelopes for ledgers that looked like junk mail. But a heavy bag? That screamed error, maybe Rico improvising on a hot cargo run, something from the docks that night, untaxed liquor or worse, a stash of unlaundered bills meant for a safe-house drop. If Elena had stumbled into it, innocent as she sounded, his code was already cracked. No innocence. He'd built his empire on that vow. After losing his wife to a stray bullet in a turf skirmish years back, the girl in the back seat was a reminder, tugging at threads he'd long buried. The tunnel spat them out onto a narrower service road, flanked by chain-link fences rattling in the wind, the distant hum of generators underscoring the isolation. Jax veered left without signalling, tires crunching over gravel as he shook the tail, or tried to. The headlights reappeared in the side mirror, closer now, dipping low like a predator scenting blood. Victor's phone buzzed again, Marco's text lighting the screen. Rico's burner last pinged near the old warehouse on Ellis. No response, sending 2 cars. Ellis Warehouse, his secondary hub for sorting manifests. Cameras covering every angle, guards on rotating shifts. If Rico was holed up there with a mistaken hostage, it was a powder keg. Victor typed back, "Hold. I'm en route. No lights, no sirens." He couldn't risk a full mobilization. One wrong move, and word would spread. Hale's operation fracturing from within. Betrayal was the cancer of this life, eating at loyalties forged in backroom deals and blood oaths. "Lila, does your mom have any enemies? Anyone who'd want to use her like this?" He kept his tone even, probing without pressure, but inside suspicion coiled. The girl's story fit too neatly. Tattoo, dented fender, the exact make of his fleet's SUVs. Coincidence, or a setup to draw him out? She shook her head, curls brushing her cheeks. "No, she's just us. Works double shifts so I can go to school. The hospital's strict, though. Cameras everywhere, and she signs in with a badge. If those men hurt her..." Her voice cracked, and Victor felt that twist again, a rare empathy cracking his shell. He thought of his daughter, gone at 8, her laughter silenced by a rival's carelessness. This kid deserved better than his world's fallout. Jax cursed under his breath as they approached the warehouse district, a sprawl of rusted silos and loading bays shrouded in fog, rolling off the river. The pursuing car had backed off, vanishing into the maze of side streets. Smart, if it was a scout. But Victor's instincts screamed trap. He scanned the shadows. A flicker of movement near the fence, perhaps a guard, or something worse. "Slow down, Jax, eyes on the doors." The Escalade rolled to a stop at the perimeter, engine idling like a held breath. Victor stepped out first, the chill air biting through his coat, carrying the acrid tang of oil and rust. Lila stayed put, as he'd instructed, but her face pressed to the window, watching. He approached the side entrance, keying in the access code on the panel. 6 digits, changed weekly, tied to his burner rotations. The lock clicked open, but as the door swung inward, a faint scuff echoed from inside. Not the usual creak of hinges, but footsteps, deliberate and hushed. Victor froze, hand slipping to the concealed holster at his belt. The warehouse interior loomed dark, lit only by emergency strips along the floor, crates stacked like silent sentinels. A muffled voice drifted from the back, feminine, strained. "Elena? Or a lure?" He signaled Jax to cover the girl and advanced, heart pounding in sync with the distant drip of water from a leak overhead. In the dim light he spotted it, a black duffel unzipped on a workbench, spilling papers, ledgers, his coded ones, marked with Rico's sloppy handwriting. Mistake confirmed, but whose? As he edged closer, a shadow detached from the stacks. Rico, neck tattoo gleaming under a bare bulb, eyes wide with something between fear and defiance. "Boss, it wasn't supposed to..." The words cut off as a side door banged open, floodlights blazing from outside, engines roaring to life. Not his crew. Vasquez colors on the vans screeching in. The real grab was here now, and Lila's mum was the bait to pull him straight into the fire. The floodlights pierced the warehouse gloom like accusatory fingers, casting long shadows that danced across the stacked crates and rusted machinery. Victor's hand closed around the grip of his pistol, the cool metal, a familiar weight against his palm. As the roar of engines drowned out the drip-drip from the overhead leak, Rico stumbled back, his snake tattoo twisting with the flex of his neck, eyes darting between Victor and the yawning side door, where 3 Vasquez vans skidded to a halt on the gravel outside. Tires crunched, doors slammed, and shouts echoed, Spanish-laced commands, the kind that promised no quarter in a turf war. "Down!" Victor barked at Rico, who dropped behind a pallet of forgotten shipping manifests, the papers rustling like dry leaves in a gale. Victor's mind raced through the logistics. Vasquez had timed this perfectly, using Rico's screw-up as cover to infiltrate his edge. The duffel on the workbench, his ledgers exposed, codes that mapped every drop point from the river docks to the penthouse safehouses, was bait too. But the muffled cry from deeper in the warehouse cut sharper than any blade. Elena, the girl's mom, caught in the crossfire of a mistake that now smelled like orchestrated betrayal. He moved low, boots silent on the oil-slicked concrete, the air thick with the metallic bite of rust and the acrid tang of adrenaline sweat. Jax's voice crackled over the earpiece Victor had slipped in during the drive. "Boss, 2 hostiles flanking the east side. Lila's secure in the SUV. Girl's a fighter, won't let me leave her alone. Need backup." "Hold position," Victor whispered. Edging toward the source of the cry, a partitioned office at the rear, its door ajar, lit by the faint glow of a desk lamp. The Vasquez crew was fanning out, their footsteps heavy, flashlights sweeping like searchlights. One beam caught the edge of a crate, illuminating a scuff mark, fresh boot prints, not Rico's. Someone had been here before, scouting rotations, maybe jamming the external cameras with a simple EMP pulse from a black market device. Human error, amplified by greed. Pushing the door open with his shoulder, Victor swept the room. A folding chair overturned, zip ties dangling from the armrests like discarded serpents. There she was, Eleanor, mid-30s, her hospital scrubs torn at the sleeve, dark hair matted with sweat, mahogany skin bruised along her jaw, but eyes fierce, unbowed. She was bound at the wrists to a pipe snaking down the wall, a gag of duct tape muffling her protests. No package near her, just a burner phone shattered on the floor, screen spiderwebbed. Likely Rico's, used to coordinate the grab before it all unraveled. He knelt swiftly, knife flicking from his boot to slice the ties. "Easy," he murmured, peeling the tape away with care, the adhesive ripping a sharp inhale from her. Up close she was striking, high cheekbones, full lips pressed into a determined line, the scent of antiseptic clinging to her like a badge from those long hospital shifts. Her brown eyes locked on his, widening not in fear, but calculation. "You're him, the boss. Lila. She found you." Victor nodded once, helping her to her feet as her legs wobbled from the strain. "She's safe, outside. This wasn't random. Your kid's got guts pulling me in." But gratitude flickered in her gaze, mixed with wariness, the push-pull of a woman who'd built walls against men like him. Autonomy was her armor. He'd seen it in nurses who'd patched his crew after brawls, stitching wounds while demanding no questions. Loyalty to her daughter versus the fear of entanglement in his web, that conflict simmered already, unspoken. A burst of gunfire shattered the moment, bullets ricocheting off metal beams overhead, showering sparks. Vasquez enforcers, 6 strong, advancing with military precision. Probably ex-military hires, common in rival ops, their vests bulging under cheap leather jackets. "Hail!" one bellowed. Voice echoing off the walls. "The ledgers are ours now. Step out or the woman's next." Elena's hand gripped his arm, nails digging in, not for protection but steadying herself, a spark of independence flaring. "I didn't take anything. That bag, it fell." Rico said it was a debt collection gone wrong, but he reeked of fear, like he was running from you as much as them. Victor processed it. Rico, the turncoat link. The tattooed runner had pocketed a cut from Vasquez, feeding them access codes in exchange for a bigger slice of the docks. Subtle tells, off-grid pings, the dented SUV plate swapped from his fleet. Betrayal, the rot that turned empires to ash. "Stay low," he told her, positioning her behind the desk as he returned fire through the doorframe. 2 suppressed shots clipping a thug's shoulder, sending him sprawling. No kills. His code held, even here, restraining the power that could end it quick. Outside, Jax's Escalade revved, a diversion as he peeled around the perimeter, drawing fire. The warehouse environment turned hostile. A sudden blackout plunged the space into near darkness. Emergency strips flickering out. Likely a cut power line, Vasquez sabotaged to level the field. Shadows merged, the hum of generators dying to a whine, forcing reliance on instinct over tech. Victor grabbed Elena's hand, pulling her toward a side exit, the air growing thicker with cordite smoke that burned the lungs. They burst into the loading bay, rain lashing down anew, turning the gravel to mud that sucked at their shoes. Rico emerged from the stacks, wild-eyed, clutching a pistol. "Boss, I swear, it was a one-time thing. Vasquez cornered me after the drop, said they'd hit my family if—" "Save it!" Victor snarled, shoving Elena behind a forklift as more shots whined past. Rico's hesitation was the tell, eyes flicking to the vans, a split-second betrayal. He raised his gun, but Elena moved first, lunging to grab a loose chain from the bay floor, swinging it like a whip to crack against Rico's wrist. The pistol flew clattering into the shadows. "You don't touch families," she spat, voice raw, echoing Victor's own creed. In that moment her ethics mirrored his, prudence over ambition, trust forged in crisis. Victor hauled Rico up by the collar, zip-tying his wrists with a spare from his pocket. "You're done. Jax'll handle the cleanup." But as sirens wailed in the distance, cops tipped off by the gunfire, institutional limits closing in, the Vasquez lead van gunned toward them, headlights blinding. Elena's breath hitched beside him, her hand finding his again, not out of need, but alliance. The pull was there. Possessive instinct warring with her fierce independence, a bond sparked in the chaos. They dove for cover as bullets pinged off the forklift, the storm raging harder, thunder masking the fray. Victor's phone buzzed in his pocket. Marco. "Crew en route. 2 minutes." Vasquez convoy jammed at the tunnel exit. Our doing. Partial victory, but at cost. Rico's exposure cracked his inner circle, and Elena's world was forever altered. As the first of his backup cars screeched in, scattering the rivals, Victor wondered if saving her meant claiming a debt of his own, or if she'd walk away, leaving him with the echo of her daughter's plea. If you're enjoying this story so far, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. The rain hammered the warehouse roof like a relentless interrogation, turning the gravel lot into a treacherous mire that clung to Victor's boots with every step. Backup cars screeched to a halt behind the forklift, their tires spinning mud as Marco's crew spilled out. 4 men in dark jackets, moving with the practiced efficiency of rotations drilled into muscle memory. Gunfire cracked the night, sharp and sporadic, the Vasquez vans peeling back under the onslaught, their taillights blurring into red streaks against the storm. Victor kept Elena low, her breath ragged against his shoulder, the scent of wet earth and cordite mingling with the faint antiseptic trace that marked her as an outsider in this chaos. Rico slumped nearby, bound and cursing under his breath, his betrayal laid bare, like the spilled ledgers now trampled into the mud. "Secure the perimeter!" Victor shouted over the thunder, his voice cutting through the din as one of his men zip-tied Rico's ankles. hauling him toward a waiting sedan. The runner's eyes pleaded, but Victor turned away. Trust shattered was a debt paid in isolation. No room for sentiment in the code that kept his empire intact. Elena pulled back slightly, her hand slipping from his, that flicker of autonomy resurfacing, even as adrenaline coursed through her veins. She wasn't cowering. Her gaze scanned the shadows, calculating escapes, weighing the cost of entanglement with a man whose world reeked of violence. "We need to move," Victor said, meeting her eyes in the strobing glare of headlights. "Vasquez won't quit. They've got your face now, your daughter's. My safe house is 10 minutes out. You'll stay there until I sort this." Her lips tightened, a mix of gratitude and defiance. "I don't need your charity, Mr. Hale. Lila and I, we handle our own messes. That bag Rico dropped, it had papers, numbers that didn't make sense. If this is about a debt, tell me straight. I won't drag my girl deeper into whatever this is." The push-pull hit him like a gut punch, her independence mirroring the prudence he'd lost years ago, after his wife's death in a crossfire that taught him power's hollow edge. Loyalty demanded he protect them, but possessiveness, that was the danger. The urge to claim what he'd unwittingly pulled into his orbit. He nodded toward the Escalade, where Jax had Lila bundled in the back, the girl's face lighting up at the sight of her mother through the rain-streaked window. "It's not charity, it's containment. Rico fed them intel. Your grab was the hook to draw me out. Those ledgers, they map my whole operation. Drop points, guard shifts, even burner phone rotations. Vasquez gets them clean, my docks go dark." Marco jogged over, rain sluicing off his slicker, handing Victor a sodden tablet recovered from Rico's jacket. "Boss, partial manifest here. Looks like Vasquez slipped a ghost plate on one of our SUVs. Dented fender was deliberate to match the girl's description. They staged the bodega bump, used the kid to reel you in. Rico's tells were there. Late reports, off pings from his phone near their territory." Victor scrolled the screen, the glow illuminating inconsistencies, a forged shipping log tying Elena's hospital shift to a phantom delivery, behavioral tells like Rico's sudden cash flush, human error amplified by greed, his own oversight in trusting a mid-level runner with sensitive runs. The storm intensified, wind whipping debris across the lot, a staged blackout lingering as generators sputtered back online with a reluctant hum. Distant sirens wailed closer, the city's institutional limits closing like a noose, cops drawn by the gunfire, complicating extraction. Elena glanced at the tablet, her nurse's eye catching details. That code, it's patient logs, disguised. I saw similar at the hospital for restricted meds, if Vasquez is using this for smuggling routes. Her voice trailed, ethics clashing with the fear of exposure. She'd built a life of quiet autonomy, double shifts for Lila's school fees, no room for the fear that now shadowed her every step. "Exactly," Victor said, pocketing the device. "Get in, we'll decode the rest en route." He guided her to the SUV, Lila scrambling into her mother's arms with a sob that twisted Victor's chest. The girl buried her face in Elena's scrubs, whispering, "I knew you'd come back, Mom." He listened. As Jax gunned the engine, the convoy formed, two sedans flanking them, headlights piercing the downpour like wary eyes. The safe house was a nondescript brownstone on the city's edge, tucked behind a row of warehouses, repurposed for storage, its security layered, motion sensors tied to silent alarms, reinforced doors with biometric locks, and a basement vault for ledgers that never saw daylight. But unease gnawed at Victor. The tale from the tunnels had been too clean, surveillance suggesting eyes deeper in his network. A compromised guard, or worse, a rival mole planted months ago. The drive wound through fog-shrouded backstreets, the river's distant churn a constant underscore, sodium lights reflecting off puddles like shattered mirrors. Inside the SUV, tension simmered. Lila's small hand clutching Elena's, Victor's gaze flicking to the mirrors every few seconds. Why help us? Elena asked quietly, breaking the silence as they crossed a grated bridge, the metal humming under tires. Your world. It's not ours. One wrong move, and we're liabilities. He met her eyes in the rear view, the pull undeniable, her strength echoing the family he'd lost, a code of protection he'd sworn after burying his daughter. Because mistakes like Rico's don't touch innocence. Not on my watch. And your girl. She grabbed my sleeve like she knew I'd drop everything. Debts like that, they bind tighter than blood. She held his stare, suspicion warring with a budding trust, the autonomy in her posture softening just a fraction. But as the brownstone loomed, its facade unassuming under the storm, a flicker caught Victor's eye, a parked sedan across the street, engine off, wipers idle. No plates visible in the rain. Partial discovery. Vasquez had anticipated the safe house, their probe turning the environment hazardous. Jack slowed, radio crackling with a scout's warning. Possible watcher, east corner. Rotations off. Looks tampered. Victor's hand went to his holster, the air thickening with the scent of impending betrayal. Had Rico's rot spread further? As they pulled into the garage, doors grinding shut behind them, he wondered if the real threat waited inside, or if Elena's fierce independence would be the key to unraveling it all before the shadows closed in for good. The garage door ground shut with a metallic groan, sealing out the storm's fury, but trapping the tension inside the Escalade like a pressure cooker. Victor's eyes lingered on the side mirror, where the suspicious sedan sat inert across the street, its silhouette blurred by sheets of rain cascading off the eaves. No movement, no glint of a lit cigarette. Professional stillness, the kind that screamed surveillance. He thumbed the biometric scanner on his key fob, disarming the interior alarms with a soft beep that echoed off the concrete walls. The air heavy with the musty scent of oil drums and stacked moving boxes that doubled as cover for hidden compartments. "Jax, sweep the perimeter." "Quietly," Victor ordered, his voice low as he opened the door, cool air rushing in, laced with the tang of wet brick. Elena hesitated in the back seat, her arms wrapped protectively around Lila, who peered out with wide eyes. The girl's earlier bravado tempered by the warehouse's echoes still ringing in her ears. "Mum, is it safe?" Lila whispered, her small fingers twisting the edge of Eleanor's scrub top, the fabric damp and clinging. "For now," Eleanor replied, her tone steady but edged with the wariness of someone who'd just stared down a betrayal. She met Victor's gaze over the seat, a flicker of challenge in her brown eyes, autonomy clashing against the necessity of his protection. "You sure this place is as secure as you think? That car out there, it's not random." Victor's jaw tightened, the pull toward her sharpening. Her prudence was a mirror to his own lost ideals, a reminder that power without restraint bred the very mistakes that had cost him his family. "Nothing's ironclad, but it's layered. Cameras on the roof feed, 2 offsite burners, motion triggers, silent alerts to my core team. Rico's mess exposed one leak. We'll plug the rest." He extended a hand to help her out, and after a beat, she took it, her palm warm and calloused from hospital shifts, a subtle tell of the life she'd carved without his world's shadows. They moved into the brownstone's lower level, a sparse kitchenette lit by under-cabinet LEDs that cast a sterile glow, the hum of a backup generator underscoring the isolation. Jax radioed from outside. "Clear so far, boss. Sedan's plates are fakes, Vasquez style, rotated from a junkyard pull. I'll jam their signal if they twitch." Victor nodded to himself, filing the detail. Human error in plate swaps, but the speed of it pointed to deeper infiltration, perhaps a guard rotation compromised weeks ago. Lila scampered to a worn couch in the adjoining living area, curling up with a blanket Victor pulled from a closet, its wool scratchy but warm. Elena lingered by the counter, scanning the space, framed photos on the wall of a younger Victor with a woman and child. Faded but telling, the legacy of loss etched in his guarded posture. "Your family?" she asked softly, not prying but probing the man behind the boss, her ethics demanding she understand the code that bound him. He poured 2 mugs of coffee from a pot left brewing on a timer, the rich aroma cutting through the damp chill, steam curling like unspoken questions. Was. Car accident. Staged. Vasquez payback for a deal gone south. Taught me the line, no innocence, no families in the crosshairs. That's why Rico's rotting in a van right now. He slid a mug her way, their fingers brushing, a spark of connection amid the unease, possessiveness stirring in him, tempered by respect for her independence. She sipped, eyes narrowing at the tablet he'd set on the counter, its screen still displaying the partial manifest. These numbers, they're not just ledgers. Look, cross-reference the dates with hospital shifts. That delivery on the 15th. I was on nights, signing for supplies. Someone piggybacked my badge scan, slipped in under the guise of a vendor. Her voice gained edge, piecing clues with a nurse's precision. Access codes mimicked institutional logs. Behavioral tells like Rico's off-pings, aligning with her rotations. Financial need had kept her vigilant, but this, it dragged her autonomy into the fray, loyalty to Lila versus the fear of endless pursuit. Victor's pulse quickened, the investigative thread tightening. A mole in your system. Vasquez has reached bribed janitors, fake manifests for meds that mask their shipments through ER bays. He pulled up a secure app on his phone, cross-checking against his discrete records. A subtle inconsistency, a guard's log entry fudged on the same night. Betrayal layered upon betrayal, his code strained under the weight. They used you as the weak link, without you knowing, but now you're in it. Elena's mug clattered down, coffee sloshing. In it. We were fine until your runner dropped that bag. I want out, names, proof, whatever it takes to end this. Her stance was firm, the push of independence against his world's pull, but her eyes softened at Lila, dozing on the couch, the human conflict raw. Prudence dictating flight, yet trust budding from the rescue. Before he could respond, the lights flickered. A brief stutter, then steady. Jax's voice crackled over the intercom. Power surge, boss. Generator held, but east fence motion tripped. Could be wind or a probe. Rising tension coiled, the environment turning hazardous, rain lashing windows like impatient fingers. Victor moved to a concealed panel, flipping to live feeds, the sedan gone, but a shadow flitted near the alley. Distant watcher. Perhaps jamming signals with a handheld disruptor, common tech from black market suppliers. Stay here, he told Elena, holstering up as he headed for the back door. She grabbed his arm, nails digging, a mix of concern and resolve. Not alone. If this is my mess too, I need to see it. The alliance deepened, her ethics aligning with his vow, but suspicion lingered. Was the surge a false alarm, or the prelude to infiltration? He nodded, and they slipped into the storm-swept yard, the wind whipping rain like shrapnel, sodium lights from a distant warehouse painting wet asphalt in eerie orange. Footsteps crunched faintly ahead, deliberate, scouting the fence line. Victor signaled silence, drawing her behind a shed stacked with rusted barrels, the metallic tang sharp in the air. A figure emerged, hooded burner-phone in hand, thumbing a message. Partial discovery. The silhouette matched a low-level Vasquez scout, one Victor's intel had flagged for probing his edges. But as they closed in, the scout spun, eyes widening, recognition flashing. "Hale, you're quicker than—" A muffled shot from the shadows cut him off, body crumpling. Not Victor's doing. Elena gasped. And to her mouth, the air thick with the acrid bite of gunpowder. Who fired, ally or deeper rot? Victor scanned the darkness, heart pounding. The real threat wasn't the scout, but the unseen hand pulling triggers in his own backyard. As sirens wailed faintly in the distance, he pulled her back toward the house, the question burning: who had just saved them, and at what cost? The rain lashed the yard like a vengeful lash, turning the ground into a slick trap that sucked at Victor's boots as he yanked Elena back toward the brownstone's rear door. The scout's body lay crumpled near the fence, a dark silhouette against the orange sodium glow, the acrid bite of gunpowder hanging heavy in the air, mingling with the earthy musk of sodden soil. No blood pooled. Suppressed shot, clean entry, the kind executed by someone who knew shadows and silences. Victor's hand stayed firm on Elena's arm, guiding her through the downpour, his mind racing through possibilities. One of his crew tying up loose ends, or a Vasquez plant turning the knife inward. The sirens wailed closer now, a Dopplered howl cutting through the storm. Institutional pressure bearing down like an unyielding tide. They burst into the kitchenette, the door slamming shut behind them with a resonant thud that echoed off the reinforced walls. Lila bolted upright from the couch, blanket pooling around her waist, her wide brown eyes darting between her mother and Victor, the faint hum of the generator underscoring the sudden hush. "Mom, what was that noise?" she asked, voice trembling, but edged with the same fierce curiosity that had drawn Victor into this web. Elena knelt beside her, pulling the girl close, the damp fabric of her scrubs transferring chill to Lila's skin. "Just the storm, baby. Go back to sleep. We're okay." But her gaze flicked to Victor, a silent demand for truth, her independence flaring even in the adrenaline's wake. The push-pull between them intensified. She wasn't a damsel yielding to his command, but an equal weighing alliance against the autonomy she'd fought to preserve. Victor locked the door, thumbing the deadbolt with a click that felt too final, the scent of coffee lingering stale from their abandoned mugs. "Jax," Victor said into his earpiece, voice low and steady. "Eyes on the yard. Scouts down, your work?" Static crackled, then Jax's gravelly response. "Negative, boss. I was east side, jamming their van signal. Shooter came from the alley. Ghost. Perimeter's holding, but cops are 2 blocks out. Evac? Not yet. Secure the body, make it vanish, and check the feeds, angle from the roof cam." Victor paced to the concealed panel, pulling up the live stream on a wall-mounted tablet, the screen's blue glow illuminating his stubbled jaw. Grainy footage replayed, the hooded figure approaching the fence, burner phone glowing, then a muzzle flash from the tree line beyond. Precise, no hesitation, no face, no tells, just a shadow detaching and melting back into the fog. Partial discovery. The shooter's gait was familiar, a subtle limp from an old dockside injury, one of his outer circle, or a rival's mimic behavioral deception layered into the breach. Elena stood, leaving Lila with a quick kiss to her forehead, and joined him at the tablet, her shoulder brushing his in the confined space, a fleeting contact that sent a possessive spark through him, tempered by the code that demanded he earn her trust, not seize it. "That wasn't random," she said, pointing to the timestamp. "Syncs with the power surge. Someone's been mapping this place. Your rotations, the generator kick in. At the hospital, we log everything. Badge swipes, delivery times. If Vasquez hacked that, they could have timed probes off my shifts." Victor nodded, the investigative thread coiling tighter, her insight a bridge between their worlds. Legacy weighed on him. The vow to shield innocence, forged in the ashes of his wife's staged crash, now tested by this intrusion. Rico's manifest had hospital cross-references, fake vendor logs, piggybacking nurse rotations for smuggling runs, meds rerouted to black market drops. You weren't the target. You were the blind spot. He scrolled to an encrypted file, decoding it with a thumbprint scan, discrete ledgers spilling dates, plates, access codes. One entry glared, a tampered alarm at the brownstone, disabled remotely 2 nights prior. Human error? No. Deliberate, a turncoat's hand. Lila piped up from the couch, her small voice cutting the tension like a knife. The man who shot. He had a funny walk, like Uncle Ray at the bodega. Mom, remember? He fixed the fridge once, but always asked weird questions about your work. Elena's face paled, a subtle tell. Ray, the building super, low profile, but always lingering near staff entrances. Ambition versus prudence. Had the man sold out for a quick payout, betraying the quiet life for Vasquez promises? Before Elena could respond, the lights stuttered again, plunging the room into momentary black, the generator whining to life with a reluctant cough. Rising tension gripped the air, the environment shifting hazardous. Storm winds rattling windows, a distant crack like a branch snapping or a forced entry. Victor drew his pistol, the weight grounding him, and motioned them toward the basement stairs. A vaulted safe room lined with concrete and stocked provisions. Down, now. Eleanor scooped Lila up without protest, but her free hand hovered near his back, a gesture of solidarity, loyalty budding against fear. They descended, the stairs creaking underfoot, the air cooler and mustier below, laced with the faint ozone of backup batteries. Victor sealed the hatch, biometrics beeping confirmation, and patched into the external cams. The yard empty now, Jax's silhouette dragging the body toward a drainage grate, rain masking the scrape. But another flicker, headlights sweeping the alley, not cops, a black sedan idling too long. Surveillance deepened, watchers closing the net. "Ray," Eleanor murmured, setting Lila on a cot, the girl's eyes heavy but alert. "He complained about money last month. Debts, he said, if he's the leak." Victor's phone buzzed, a burner text from Marco. Ray's plates matched the tunnel tail, intercepted call log, Vasquez payoff for safe house schematics, en route to extract. Betrayal confirmed, the cost mounting, exposure of his inner logistics, a fracture in the code that prized loyalty above all. He met Elena's eyes in the dim LED glow, the human conflict raw, her suspicion of his world clashing with the trust forged in the warehouse fire, possessiveness urging him to shield her, while her ethics demanded transparency. "We'll end it. But this binds us. Your family's safe because I dropped that phone. Debts like Lila's plea. They don't vanish." She stepped closer. The space between them charged, her hand resting on his arm, not yielding but choosing. "Then make it right. No more shadows for her." The words hung, a pledge amid the storm's muffled roar above, but as Jax's voice crackled, "Intruders at the fence, boss. 3, armed." The basement hatch rattled faintly, jammed exit or forced breach looming. Who was the unseen shooter, savior or saboteur? And could Victor's code hold before the safe house became their grave? If this tale already has you hooked, hit the like button. It helps us bring more hidden stories to light. The basement safe room's LEDs cast a clinical pallor over the concrete walls, turning Victor's face into a mask of stark angles as he pressed his ear to the hatch's reinforced panel. The rattle came again, subtle, like a gloved hand testing the seal, followed by the muffled scrape of boots on the stairs above. Rain drummed overhead, a relentless percussion masking the intruder's movements, but the air down here carried the faint, oily tang of intrusion, seeping through vents meant to filter threats. Lila clung to Eleanor's side on the cot, her small body rigid, breaths shallow and quick, while Elena's hand hovered near a fire extinguisher mounted on the wall, a makeshift weapon, her independence refusing to yield fully to the vault's confines. 3 on the perimeter, boss." Jax's voice hissed through the earpiece, laced with static from the storm's interference. Ray's leading, got a Vasquez earpiece clipped to his collar. They're cutting the fence with bolt cutters, no subtlety. Generators holding, but if they breach the yard... Victor's grip tightened on his pistol, the cool metal grounding him against the surge of betrayal's sting. Ray, The super, with his limp from a warehouse slip years back, now the ghost shooter who dropped the scout, not a savior but a double agent, playing both sides for the highest bidder. Legacy twisted in Victor's gut. He'd extended his code's protection to the Brownstone staff, quiet payouts to keep eyes loyal, but ambition had eroded that trust like acid on steel. "Hold the line, Jax. Draw them to the garage. Buy us time. Marco's convoy." "5 out. Traffic's jammed at the bridge. Storm's a beast." The line crackled, then cleared, leaving Victor with the hum of the backup batteries and the weight of Elena's gaze boring into him. She stood now, extinguisher in hand, her scrubs still damp, clinging to the curve of her shoulders, the scent of rain and resolve mingling in the close air. "Ray," she said, voice low but edged with fury, piecing the clues with the precision of someone who'd triaged crises in ER bays. "He fixed our radiator last winter, asked about my shifts like it was small talk, but now, if he's the leak, he knew Lila's routine, the bodega run, used us to bait you." Her eyes flashed, loyalty to her daughter clashing with the fear of deeper entanglement, the push-pull evident in the way she angled her body between Lila and the hatch, protecting her own, even here. Victor nodded, holstering his weapon to pull a tablet from the wall locker, its screen blooming with encrypted feeds. The investigative thread unraveled further. Ray's call logs, intercepted by Marco mid-transit, showed pings to Vasquez burners, syncing with Rico's off-grid drops. Subtle behavioral tells, a sudden flush of cash in Ray's accounts, disguised as overtime from the building co-op, tied to tampered access codes for the safe house. Human error, yes, but orchestrated. Ray's limp had been the mimic, a deliberate echo to throw suspicion onto Victor's inner circle. He sold the schematics for a cut of the docks. Vasquez promised him a piece if they crack my ledgers. Shipping routes masked as hospital supplies, meds for their street trade. Your badge scans were the key. He piggybacked them to slip manifests through ER loading docks. Elena's jaw set, ethics warring with the raw survival instinct that had her glancing at the cot where Lila whispered questions into the blanket. "And the shooter in the yard? Cleaning up his own mess before you connected it?" She stepped closer, the space between them charged, her free hand brushing his arm, not for support, but to demand clarity, autonomy demanding. She own her role in this unraveling. Probably. Ties up the loose end. The scout saw too much. Victor's voice roughened, the code straining. No innocence but Ray's betrayal dragged Eleanor and Lila into the fire, echoing the loss that had forged his vows. Possessiveness flared in him, the urge to shield her sharpening into something deeper, a bond tested by the crisis. But her independence held firm, a counterweight that drew him rather than repelled. "We wait for extraction. Basement's got a secondary exit. Tunnel to the alley, old utility line. If they breach, we move." The hatch shuddered harder now, a metallic clang reverberating through the frame, bolt cutters or a ram, the environment turning lethal as the storm above fed the chaos below. Lila whimpered, burying her face in Elena's side, and Victor knelt, his broad frame folding to meet the girl's eyes, voice softening the way it hadn't since his daughter's laughter filled a similar safe space. "Hey kid, remember how you grabbed my sleeve? That took guts. We're getting out, together." Her nod was small, trust flickering in those wide brown eyes, a found family sparking amid the rot. Elena watched, something softening in her posture, the human conflict easing just a fraction, suspicion yielding to the shared stake. "You dropped that phone for her. Don't make me regret believing in that." Her words hung, a tentative pledge, loyalty bridging the gap between her prudent world and his shadowed one. Jax's update cut in. "They're in the yard, boss. Ray's calling shots, wants the ledgers from the vault. Garage diversions holding, but one's circling the house." Tension coiled tighter, surveillance closing in, the Brownstone's layers peeled back by the mole's intel. Victor keyed the secondary exit, a hidden panel grinding open with a low whine, revealing a narrow tunnel choked with dust and the faint drip of groundwater. The air turned cooler, musty, carrying the river's distant brine through cracks in the old masonry. "Go!" he urged, ushering them in, pistol drawn as he covered the rear. Elena moved first, Lila hoisted on her hip, the extinguisher slung over her shoulder like a badge of defiance. The tunnel swallowed them. Walls brushing shoulders, the overhead storm muffled to a dull roar. But halfway through, a new sound pierced. Footsteps echoing from the far end, faint but purposeful, converging. Not Jack's. Ray's limp, unmistakable now, the scrape thud syncing with a radio's static burst. "Found the tunnel!" Ray's voice grated through the walls, close enough to raise hairs. "Hale's trapped. Vasquez, seal the alley." Betrayal's full weight crashed down. Ray had known the utility line, mapped it from maintenance logs. The environment betrayed them, jammed exits turning the escape into a gauntlet. Victor shoved Elena ahead, heart pounding in sync with the drip-drip, mind racing for the next play, convoy or confrontation. As shadows lengthened at both ends, he wondered if Ray's greed would claim them all, or if Elena's unyielding resolve would carve the path out before the tunnel became their end. The tunnel's confines pressed in like a vice, the damp walls slick with condensation that beaded and dripped in erratic rhythms, echoing off the narrow passage, like a countdown. Victor's breath came steady but shallow, the musty air thick with the tang of old masonry and groundwater seeping from unseen cracks, carrying the faint, briny whisper of the river beyond. Elena moved ahead, Lila clutched tight against her chest, the girl's whimpers muffled against her mother's shoulder as the extinguisher bumped rhythmically against Elena's thigh. Victor brought up the rear, pistol raised, its barrel an extension of his resolve, the cool metal grounding him against the scrape thud of Ray's limp growing louder from the far end. Deliberate, unhurried, the super's betrayal unfolding in real time. "Keep moving," Victor murmured, his voice a low rumble that cut through the drip-drip without carrying. The secondary exit was 50 feet ahead, a grated manhole leading to the alley. But Ray's radio static crackled faintly, sealing that hope. Vasquez enforcers converging, their engines idling in the storm-lashed street above, headlights sweeping like search beams. The environment had turned predator, the old utility line, a relic of the city's underbelly, mapped in Victor's discreet ledgers for emergency evac. Now a death trap. Jammed by intel Ray had sold for a fistful of promises. Elena's pace quickened, her free hand trailing the wall for balance, the faint glow of her phone's flashlight app casting jittery shadows that danced like phantoms. "Lila, hold on tight. We're almost there," she whispered, her voice steady despite the tremor in her limbs, autonomy fueling her forward momentum. But the human conflict raged unspoken. Trust in Victor's code, warring with the prudence that screamed to cut ties, to vanish into the night with her daughter and leave his shadows behind. Yet here she was, bound by the debt of his dropped phone, loyalty forged in the warehouse's fire. Ray's voice echoed closer, gravelly and laced with false bravado. "Hale, you built this cage. Now it's closing. Vasquez pays better than your scraps. Hand over the woman and the kid. Ledgers are mine to trade." The limp accentuated each word, a tell Victor had overlooked in maintenance logs, human error amplified by greed. Ray had been the unseen hand, staging the bodega bump with Rico, mimicking the limp to frame Victor's crew, even the yard shot to eliminate the scout before exposure. Betrayal's logistics were meticulous. Burner pings routed through hospital Wi-Fi, access codes lifted from Elena's badge scans during repairs. Victor spun, sighting down the tunnel where Ray's silhouette loomed, flashlight beam lancing through the gloom like a blade. 2 shots rang out, suppressed pops that barely disturbed the storm's muffled roar above, clipping the wall inches from Ray's head and sending chips of concrete flying. "You touch them, and your limp's the least of your worries," Victor growled, advancing a step, possessiveness flaring, not just for the Empire, but for the fragile family he'd unwittingly claimed. Ray ducked behind a junction box, firing wildly, bullets whining off the pipes overhead in a shower of sparks. Elena reached the grate first, shoving Lila up onto a makeshift ledge as she wedged the extinguisher's nozzle into the lock, twisting with desperate leverage. "It's rusted, won't budge," she hissed, sweat beading on her forehead, mixing with the tunnel's chill. The grate rattled under her efforts, but Vasquez's shadows flickered through the slats above, enforcers prying at the cover, their grunts audible over the rain's pound. Rising tension peaked, the tunnel a crucible, blackouts from the storm jamming signals, guards' rotations compromised by Ray's leaks, the very ground turning hazardous with its narrow confines and echoing acoustics. "Cover me," Victor said, holstering to join her, his larger frame shouldering the grate as Elena yanked the extinguisher back for another pry. Ray lunged from the shadows, pistol raised, but Lila's cry pierced the fray. "Mom!" Drawing Eleanor's eye a split second too long, Victor shoved her aside as Ray's shot grazed his shoulder, a hot sting blooming through his coat, blood seeping warm and metallic. Injury's cost hit immediate, arm numbing, but he didn't falter, swinging a fist that connected with Ray's jaw, the crack echoing like thunder in miniature. The super crumpled, pistol skittering into the dark, his radio buzzing with Vasquez's demands, "Seal it, Hale's hit." Elena seized the moment, slamming the extinguisher down on Ray's wrist as he groped for the gun, her ethics unyielding, no mercy for the man who'd threatened her world. "You used my girl," she spat, voice raw, pinning him until Victor zip-tied his hands with a spare from his belt. The grate gave way with a screech, Victor heaving it aside as Jax's voice crackled through the earpiece. "Convoy's here. Alley clear, but cops are circling the block. Move!" They scrambled out into the storm, rain stinging like needles. The alley, a slick gauntlet flanked by overflowing dumpsters reeking of rot and river mud. Marco's sedans idled at the end, doors flinging open as enforcers laid cover fire, scattering the Vasquez probe with precise bursts. No kills, Victor's code enforced even in retreat. Elena bundled Lila into the lead car, Victor sliding in beside them, shoulder throbbing but ignored, the wound a badge of the night's toll. As tires spun gravel, peeling into the night, the safe house receded, sirens fading behind. A partial victory, exposure cracking Victor's network, but the ledgers secured in his jacket, Rico and Ray's betrayals, cauterized. The drive blurred through fog-shrouded streets, the river's churn a distant lullaby, until they reached a secondary safe house, a modest penthouse overlooking the docks, its windows barred and feeds rerouted to fresh burners. Medics from Victor's inner circle patched his shoulder in the dim living room, antiseptic sharp in the air, while Lila dozed on a guest bed, Elena stroking her curls with exhausted tenderness. The revelation settled like the storm's aftermath. The threat had been meticulously organized, Vasquez's infiltration woven through hospital logistics, bodega drops and turncoat moles, all to seize the ledgers and choke Victor's empire. Victory came scarred, his operation exposed, feds likely tipped by the gunfire, a sacrifice of trust in his circle. But the true treasure gleamed clearer, protection earned through shared peril, trust kindled in the tunnel's dark. Elena joined him on the balcony hours later, the city lights twinkling below like guarded secrets, the air crisp with post-rain ozone. "It's over?" she asked, leaning on the rail, her independence intact, but softened by the night's forge. "Close enough." Vasquez pulls back, too much heat now. Ray and Rico, handled quietly, no loose ends. He turned to her, the pull undeniable, possessiveness yielding to a deeper commitment. "But you and Lila, you're not liabilities. That code I live by, it just grew. Stay. Let me protect what's mine. Us." She searched his eyes, the human conflict resolving in a slow nod, ethics aligning with the loyalty they'd built. No grand gestures, just a hand in his. Believable in the scars they shared, a future pledged in quiet vows, found family outlasting the power plays. The docks hummed below, shipments resuming under new rotations, but the real legacy was here. Memory of a sleeve-grabbed plea, transforming shadows into something enduring. In the weeks that followed, the empire mended, ledgers recoded, guards vetted anew, but the adventure's echo lingered stronger than any spoil. Loyalty, etched in rain-slicked tunnels and defiant stands, outshone raw power. Elena's prudence tempered Victor's world. Lila's trust, a bridge to the family he'd thought lost. They carved a life amid the logistics, bonds unbreakable, the river's flow a reminder that some debts, once paid, became home. Subscribe to our channel for more incredible tales of loyalty, danger and found family. See you in the next story.